Hello there and welcome back, Cozy Club. As always, it's a beautiful day for some DSA. And for those of you in America, happy 4th of July weekend, my friends. I have decided that this is going to be the tier list week. Now, earlier in the week, we had both the Master and the PvP tier list for all of the characters in the game. We had awesome reception on that video, a lot of likes, and guys, you guys just killed it in the comment section. However, on today's video, we're going to be going over a tier list of something I don't think gets near enough love within Disney Sorcerer's Arena, and that is going to be the spells within the game. We're going to be ranking them from F all the way up to S tier, just like our character tier list, talking about each one just a little bit and how they are in each game mode and overall within the game. Unlike characters, spells are going to do well in most all game modes. If it's going to do well in PvP, it's going to be a great spell for the raid as well. And I hope the team behind DSA really starts pumping out more spells because I think they just bring a lot of creativity to the game altogether. And it really opens up rosters and then different teams, so we don't see the same thing over and over. Let's go ahead and get right to the spell tier list and start with today's video. All right, Cozy Club. Well, before we get started with today's spell tier list, just a couple of notes. Now, unlike the character tier list where we're going left to right within the tiers, if any spell is an A+, they're all going to be A+. And also, guys, just because a spell is ranked pretty low doesn't mean it's not going to be useful. You can definitely find situations or teams to plug in every spell within the game for the most part. There's definitely a couple that are just trash. Other than that, we might have a couple that can float between tiers. I'll explain those when we get to them. But as always, let's go and jump right into it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the F tier, but here are the F tier list of spells. We've got ourselves Snowgees, Magical Meteor, PJT, or Prince John's Taxes, and Triggers Tower. Kicking off with probably the worst spell is going to be Snowgees. It has a little bit of a chance to slow, a little bit of a chance to stun. These things have been built into characters' kits. It's a beta spell. Complete trash, dumpster fire, garbage, whatever you want to say or label it. It's a terrible spell. Next up, we've got the first spell you start out with, and you can notice I haven't even leveled it up at all. It's not worth the resources. Magical Meteor is a big AoE spell that does some damage. It's gonna be nice to use in a couple of the towers when you start out, but as soon as you can get rid of it, you're gonna want to replace it with a spell that can do a whole lot more. Also in the F tier is going to be Prince John's Taxes. This spell, you keep thinking it might be okay. It's just a little bit too random to work well, both within the raids and PvP. It just doesn't seem to find its footing. It was bugged for a long time, and then it's just kind of fallen off. Until we get some kind of boost with the Robin Hood characters, this is where it's going to stay. Lastly, we've got the other beginner spell, Triggers Tower, and it can be situational within the Towers of Endurance or in PvE scenarios. It's nice if you kill an enemy, you can get some more speed meter back, but within the raids or any other later mid-game or late game, you're not going to use it. So this is a hot pass into the F tier as well. Moving on up to the D tier, it's going to be a significant step up. Not just one, but maybe about 5 to the next set of spells. We've got some great ones in here, and they do okay situationally. There's places to use them, but there's definitely better spells to use. Starting in the D tier, let's go ahead and take a look at Dad Pants. Now, Dad Pants, other than looking awesome, or Dad Moves, I think Dad Pants, looking at the image here, it's great with the onward characters like Ian and Barley. It could be situational. Arguably, you're going to want to use something like Golden Hammer or Infinity-Sided Die with them instead. A nice silence and some offense down. It got a big nerf about last summer, and it hasn't been quite the same since, but it's going to be a decent spell in some situations. Next is Zap, and Zap is interesting. It's going to be doing more damage against Oceanics. It's supposed to hop back and forth and do some okay damage. I've tried to use this thing a good amount. It's situational within the raid or phase 4 with Ursula, but outside of that, the damage is nice, but it just doesn't even equal the viability of other spells, so Zap is going to end up in the D tier as well. Looking at Iago's Foul Play, it used to be a pretty solid spell way back in the day. We're in this helpful effect, harmful effect meta, so you would think this would be solid. It's just missing that extra oomph factor about it. If this spell did get a rework, it would be pretty powerful under the right circumstances, and if they made it more kind of kingdom relevant, expect this thing to rise if it ever got a buff. Next up is the C tier, and we're going to start off with Bucket of Soldiers. Now, It's kind of a confusing spell. Mid-game and early game, this is one of the best possible spells that you could run. However, later in the game, the more moves does not equal better. You know, people like Hercules gonna feed up a lot of turn meter. In the raid, you're gonna feed all the, raid turn meter to the bosses. So you might want to stand clear of this in those game modes. However, I think it might find its relevance back either with Woody and Toy Story buffs or with all the assist teams that we have like Eve and Calhoun and Mickey. I think this thing might find its viability one day again, but for now it's going to end up in the C tier. But if you're in the beginner and mid game, this thing's going to kick some butt. Thunder Mountain Boom. On paper, it looks very solid. Unfortunately, nowadays, the matches go really fast. And again, great kind of early mid game spell. Not going to give you really anything within the raids, but if it's able to go off, you're going to be able to get a nice stun on the enemy. And if you get it all the way up, some magic reduction. It has its uses, and at times you could argue this could be a very high-end spell, but it's just not consistent enough. And because it doesn't do really anything within the Forbidden Depths or the raids, we're going to put it here in the C tier as well. The last spell of the C tier is going to be Spirit Mufasa. Now, Mufasa, he just needs to be his own character. Can you say wild, legendary? Put in the comments down below if that's what you would want to see. Spirit Mufasa, it does some things with Simba. Simba's not the best character to use, so that kind of goes out the window. Each and every role is going to get a different buff. If they're offense, they get offense up. Defense gets defense up. Nothing really special there. It can be situational, like before an Elsa show yourself, or you can grant a guaranteed crit to support characters, and I'm not seeing this used near enough. Give this to someone like Mickey Mouse before Disneyland Forever, and you're pretty much going to win the match for sure. Now we are moving our way to some pretty solid spells. Everything up from the B tier up. Gonna be great spells that you can use situationally, and we've got some really solid winners in here. Starting off with Dumbo. Dumbo, or Peanut Pummel, is going to be a huge spell within the raid and an awesome spell also within PvP. You're going to be able to not only put blind on an enemy, but also you're going to remove all of their turn meter once up to level 4. Super solid spell. And if you want to know more about the spell levels and things like that, we've got a lot of videos kind of breaking those down. This is a very great spell to use against gluts and other raid bosses. One that I regret not taking up, but those resources are so thin when it comes to upgrading your spells. Definitely a very solid investment. Next up, we've got 2 Toy Story spells, both Wild Imagination and Claw. They're going to be situational with the teams you use them in. Wild Imagination can do some very great things with a full Toy Story villains lineup that you can use in Club Conquest, and it's great to get heal blocks and continuous damage out there for different teams like Claude Frollo or Hades. Whereas Claw is going to be a little bit different altogether. This spell once reigned supreme in the early kind of pre-nerf hero, way back hero meta with all the evades on the field. It's still awesome to use with Buzz Lightyear to give him a lot of turn meter, or just clear evades or get some damage out there, poke through some Hercules defenses, anything like that. It is great to use, and it's very fast charging. It's going to end up kind of middle of the pack here, though, and not the best spell or not the worst. But if you're looking for a very fast spell to use that you just want to keep on using on the opponent, kind of lap their spells, this is going to be your choice. It feels good to put Fairy Slumber this low. Those that have been playing for a long time, this used to be the spell, the only spell you could possibly run within the game. It would just completely nuke down an enemy, and it's still very solid within PvP. Doesn't get a lot done within the raids, but you can put one enemy to sleep, get some slows out there. It's not the worst thing in the world. It does reduce speed meter as well. So pretty good in PvP. It's nice to see it sit right here though, guys. Solid spell, but this thing had its heyday. The last spell in the B tier is probably the most random spell. Sometimes this thing can be an S tier spell. Sometimes it can be an F tier if you're giving the wrong buffs to the wrong characters. And because of the randomness, we're going to put it here right in the middle. I do love running this thing with Elsa, with Ian. There's a lot of characters that you can run it with, like Hercules and Ralph, that stack up helpful effects, and it's absolutely clutch with certain characters. But because of its randomness and just not being able to control it, it's going to sit somewhere in the middle here in the B tier, being our last spell. But again, at times S tier, other times F tier. Now, our first spell in the A tier is going to be Splash Mountain Soak. Now, Splash Mountain kind of gone up and down throughout the months of the metas, and depending what's relevant at the time, it kind of goes up and down, like I said. However, this thing can increase harmful effects and decrease magic Love to use this against characters like Hercules or Ralph to shut them down from getting their ultimates, and it can be very clutch in a game winner in a good amount of situations. That, and also it's good to use in the raid to reduce the big one-shot KO abilities of the raid boss. Altogether, pretty solid spell that I love running with kind of a debuff heavy team, and I cannot fault you for putting this in your lineup, as it's one of my favorites. Duke Kaboom. One of those spells that no one's worried about until they are, right? When this thing comes out first, animation so low. However, inflicting 3 essentially guaranteed crits on the enemy is huge for those big damage dealers setting up like Zerg or Go-Go. Really, anyone in the game can benefit from this spell, and it's kind of my go-to for anything if I just don't know what to place with the team. You're going to get good damage from it in the raids. You're going to be really surprising opponents within PvP, and it's your ticket to really grind and get through the Ascension campaign. I love Duke Kaboom. It's an essential, amazing spell, and you can use it in a ton of lineups. Now we're going to be entering a category that I like to call floaters. Now with spells, there's very unique spells that can do different things, and we've got 3 different spells that could easily be an A+ spell depending on what happens with the outcome of it. Kind of like what we talked about earlier, but these are a lot more consistent than the ones previously, like Infinity's Sided Die. The first floater spell is going to be Headless Horseman. This thing is awesome in PvP and does have use within the raids as well, getting a 75 or up to a 75% chance to inflict silent on an entire row, shutting down big major characters, putting fear on raid bosses so you can guarantee to inflict harmful effects like turn meter down. It's got a lot of potential, just depending if it can land that silence, but once up to level 4, it's definitely a great spell to run within PvP. Our next floater is Clock Tower. Now, Clock Tower is probably the biggest definition of a floater spell. Essentially, guys, you're going to go and put a midnight countdown on your enemy from 1 to 2 turns, and they're going to turn into a polymorph pumpkin, rendered useless, and you can just beat the living crap out of them. However, if it has a 2-turn countdown on the enemy, it's just not that great. It takes too long to get the job done, and you're going to either get it back on you through like Pocahontas, or they're going to cleanse it. However, if this does land the 1-turn polymorph, it is amazing and easily could be an A+ spell, especially in PvP. The big knock on it, though, is it has virtually no use within the raids. Now, we're going to go ahead and enter the A+ category, and we're starting off with a floater here because this could be an A, an A+, or an S, and that's because it depends on the character. And Peter Pan Shadow, I expect a nerf. I'm being honest. If you've invested in this, I have. This thing is so inconsistent to what the developers want to do with it. They say they don't want it to work on passives like Dr. Facilier, but then you've got Wreck-It Ralph able to copy glitch, and he gets a bunch of turns over and over. You can just do so much harm with this spell, like copying Hercules or shadowing Maui to get endless Moana turns. This thing can be amazing, or it can just be trash. Depends on the character, but I just don't know what the glue team or the DSA team is going to end up doing with this guy. Now for some solid A+ spells, we've got ourselves Grandma Tala, the healing spell of the game, in towers, PvE, and in the raid. Super, super clutch. This thing can really get you out of a bad situation in PvP or in the raids with monster healing, and with Oceanics, it's easily an S tier spell under Moana. However, I'm curious to see how it holds up. We are shortly going to be entering kind of a big damage meta once T9 comes, and these monster abilities and the health stats just don't seem to be there. So I'm curious to see if you're even able to heal your characters, or are they just going to be dead so fast you can't even get the healing done, which is where you're going to want to use our next spell in the A+ category. This spell has gotten more nerfs than I can count on one freaking hand. They're always adjusting it. It's super overpowered at times. Right now, it seems to be at a pretty good spot, and it's extra great with Fix-It Felix. This is the only reviving spell in the game, and outside of Rapunzel, really the only way to get people back. And it can be super clutch. If they kill Beast, if they kill Ralph, very awesome spell. You can only use it once in battle, so I encourage you, don't waste it if someone not important on your team dies. Wait for one of the big kickers like Beast or like Mickey Mouse to go ahead and die to use it. It'd be a great spell, easily could be S tier, very solid, and it's great in any game mode. For the first time in a long time, Conjuring Cauldron has now gone down from the best spells in the game. It's still amazing. I use it personally in pretty much every PvP lineup that I've got. It has great uses, and now that Hercules is getting tamed down, it might be on the rise again. It's probably my favorite spell within the raid, and it's amazing in PvP with the right characters like Mickey Mouse or Ralph or some of those other cooldown characters, giving you extra speed, giving you extra magic cooldowns, decreasing the length of those cooldowns. Very solid, and I think it's going to be a game winner come the new PvP game mode. Unfortunately, at the moment, Hercules, if you're running up against him a lot, he's going to keep on countering people that gain turn meter, so that is what knocks this thing out of the S tier. Here we go, the S tier. These are the best spells within the game. Again, guys, B, A plus, and S, all amazing spells. All three of these spells are so good in PvP that they earned their ranking this high. Let's go ahead and take a look at our first spell, Blue Fairy Magic. Guys, Wand or BMF or Blue Fairy Magic is such a great spell, and there's never not a time, double negative, that you don't want to use this. Triple negative. One is just an amazing spell altogether. You can go ahead and cleanse debuffs, give yourself a big time speed up or turn meter up. You're going to flip defense down to defense up, offense down to offense up, and give yourself a significant damage, because right now we're in this control meta where the villains like Ursula are shutting down characters, and you're able to kind of checkmate them by flipping the tide, getting, let's say, Baymax out of Polymorph, and then cleansing your entire team. Pairing this thing up with Baymax or other cleansers like Pocahontas is extra clutch, so you can go ahead and get that full cleanse out there for the rest of your units. Sugar Rush, Sugar Rush, Sugar Rush. Guys, this thing is so amazing. It just got a buff with the Wreck-It Ralph team. Guys, people are sleeping on how incredible this spell is. Now, first and foremost, you're going to need this anyway to unlock Ralph as a legendary maxed out, which you guys already know my feelings about that. However, this thing got a buff of the gods. It's going to go ahead and grant haste to everyone on your team. They're all going to get 40% speed turn meter, and in addition, it's going to call up to 3 teammates to do a basic attack. There is not a team this doesn't fit well with. In the raids, you're going to get all that extra TM. It's like having a Gaston giving that AoE turn meter to everybody. And you're going to have the basics go out like Mickey's calling to assist. This spell takes a little bit to charge, but other than that, and especially if you've got Wreck-It Ralph teams, this is one of the best spells in the game and is a must on most lineups. That brings us to our last spell, Cozy Club, the Mortal Potion. Now, guys, this is a PvP winner, and that's why it's getting ranked so high. This is going to be a must-use spell if you're using Hades, if you're using the villains, or if you just want to go ahead and get rid of and purge those taunts from Baymax or those big protects from Hercules. This is almost a must-have spell when going live PvP against Hercules if you don't have them, because mainly, once that invincibility comes up on either Maui or Hercules, you're going to have this or you're going to lose the battle. The fact that this not only purges but also flips helpful to harmful effects makes it even better, and it's just, man, this spell is freaking insane. And there you have it, Cozy Club. There are all of the spells in DSA. We went from F all the way up to S tier. Let me know down in the comments below, what spell do you enjoy the most using, or did I get one right or wrong, or you've got kind of a strategy no one knows about? Put it down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for coming by today's video, and as always, stay cozy.